Hello everybody, I'm Basco's Mats and welcome to the Basco's Mats channel. Today I am doing a kind of video I haven't really done before, but it's probably going to become a common occurrence soon enough. What I'm doing today is in fact reviewing a game. It's a game from a series that is very near and dear to me. It's a game from a series that I've been playing for years, over a decade. And it is of course the final chapter of the Xehanort saga in the Kingdom Hearts series. Just a disclaimer before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the video. The gameplay you'll be seeing on screen and the scenes, if any, that I will be putting on screen will be from early game. So even when I'm talking more about the end game stuff, the spoiled territory, I may still have that gameplay there, just because for my streams basically I've been doing recently, I've only done the beginning of the game. It's not the reason why, it's like I planned that to be like I only want the first few worlds, so that like in case someone who hasn't played it yet wants to experience like the more mid-game and end-game for themselves, because a lot of that was kind of hidden compared to, say, the early world stuff, because that was in the majority of the first few trailers. Also, yeah, do bear in mind the quality of the videos, the clips. The streams I did, they were from PS4 capture. They're just going to be archives I've brought from YouTube onto basically the video whilst I'm editing it. And I did have some like resolution problems. It was very grainy. Even though I was using the Pro for it, it didn't seem to handle the 1080 60 FPS very well. So when I tried going down to standard 1080, it was still a bit fishy. So those were the only two resolutions I was able to play with the first few streams that I did. Right, so for the review, this will be in a note format. It's a little scripted, but most of it is just notes. And I've got them all on paper, so if you hear a bit of a... then, you know, that's because I'm changing a page. Anyway, so what we're going to go through first is gameplay. So that's including combat, movement, fluidity, in a sense the special abilities you can have which aren't necessarily combat, but kind of mini games kind of weaved into combat. So that will be the attraction flows, and also on top of that the extras you get during combat, which again goes with combat. Also, when we get to story, I will be going more in depth with the past of the series, and then how it's all tied up, and some things not necessarily tied up in this game. So that segment alone is going to be quite hefty and meaty, and it's also spoiler filled, so if you don't know anything much about the series and just want to know about the game, this will be at the end, so just skip to a timestamp I'm presumably going to put down. And also the last note before we get in, if you want timestamps for each section, because you don't want to bother with a certain one, they will all be in the description. The reason they won't be on the screen is because, I mean, you can't click on screen anymore, notifications have gone. Not notifications, annotations, sorry. I've been out of the game for a bit. Have gone. So the description is going to be where you're going to find the section for gameplay, combat, and then story, and of course verdict, but I mean, that I've already said that's going to have a timestamp anyway. Before I ramble on too much, let's just finally get into the video. So first up, I'm kind of breaking my own rules here already, one thing in, I know, about combat and gameplay. It's gameplay related, so I can say it, okay? The gameplay itself feels relatively fluid, a lot more fluid than I was initially imagining it being after the quote-unquote tech demo, which released in 2017, around January 24th, if I remember correctly, which was using the same engine, the same systems that was going to be in Kingdom Hearts 3, yet it felt just a tad too clunky, but fortunately it hasn't felt like that in Kingdom Hearts 3. In fact, it feels a lot more like one of the earlier games, which many consider to be the best, I would say, is Kingdom Hearts 2, or more specifically, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. It still lacks some of the fluidity though. There's some parts, like with the running, it feels it still feels a tad clunky, but the jumping and the air dashing, which is a feature you can do in the games, doesn't feel as slow and as laggy as it has done in previous titles after and before Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3. This usually was down to the team that was developing the game, although I feel like they, over their past 10 years, have figured out, finally, how to make a nice, fluid piece of movement. And I thoroughly enjoy it. Not as much as Kingdom Hearts 2, but I thoroughly enjoy it. A gameplay addition I've really respected, which goes with the fluidity of the new game, Kingdom Hearts 3, and the previous proper installment being Dream Drop Distance. They both include a system called flow motion, and flow motion is just basically another means of transport, which is a tad bit faster than walking/running, but it requires a bit more precision, and it can be temperamental. But what I'm going to go over here is how fluid it is, and how much it's more of a helpful tool for moving around than it is for fighting, because that in its own rights as a gameplay system was very broken in Dream Drop Distance. I say that because you could basically spam the use of flow motion and use it to jump on walls, bounce off the walls, and then do like a slam attack, which created a really wide shockwave, and it chunked damage off of pretty much any enemies it came near. It was great for crowd control, but it was too great. In Kingdom Hearts 3, however, it has been nerfed, not to the ground, but it's been nerfed. It can still be exploited, but it's not as powerful. It's not going to destroy a room of enemies in under 2 seconds like it used to. And especially in Proud Mode, that is a good change, because that means it makes up for some of the misbalancing with other things that I'll go on to later, because them themselves aren't too powerful, and the flow motion itself hasn't got the same amount of what's the word I'm looking for, aggression that it had, or that the player needed to give it to basically win the game. That aside, have you ever heard the phrase, the term, the old phrase, when one thing's fixed, another thing breaks? I'm not sure if people actually say that, but in the case of Kingdom Hearts 3, that is the case. So yeah, we have balanced flow motion, fair enough. But then the flow of magic and the power of magic has increased to such a point where that's all you need to use, practically, to win the game, finish the game. I don't know why I keep saying win the game, just ignore that. Okay? So yeah, no matter what kind of setup you're going for in the game, whether it be the more warrior setup with, more health, more strength, or whether you're going for the more wizard, magey setup, which, of course, would be more powerful magic, more MP, it still doesn't seem to matter in the game, because you get to a point, maybe a few hours in, when you have all the base magics, and even then, they can just be so overpowered, and it's a problem, but it's also not a problem, because I guess it makes people want to use a mix-up of hand-to-hand combat and magic, because, it made me do that. I never really used magic in in the other games, but the flow of it here, it seemed satisfying enough, and the power of it seemed great enough for me to want to use it. Although I feel that's also a problem, the power of it. Not the flow of it. The flow of it's great. You can move around and practically cast anything. But the power, as much as I love to be able to disintegrate my enemies with fire, it's just, I feel too cheap to just keep using that. Around the end of the game, I wanted to stop using that. The only time I used it was on certain bosses that are a bit faster, or a bit they like to hover around, so it's not that easy to use actual hand-to-hand combat with it. But other than that, I tried to stop using it because in endgame, it was too easy to take down an enemy, and it only gets worse if you keep leveling up. Like, after I'd finished the game, I'd leveled up and stuff, and the power and flow of magic only gets better, and it's, well, better, but also worse, if you get what I mean. So that was causing me to basically take out the final, trying to not spoil anything here, the final lot of bosses in under 5 minutes, where my first run, it took at least 10-15 for the majority of it. I realise that this section is getting scarily close to the combat section I'm supposed to be touching on later, but don't worry, that's going to be everything, well, not everything, but some of the things here in a bit more depth, because in Kingdom Hearts, a lot of the gameplay is combat orientated, if you don't already know. So the next thing I'm going to go off, again, is related to combat, and that is the use of form changes. Form changes were taken from Kingdom Hearts 2, but are used slightly differently in this one, where it's linked to your Keyblade, and that's the gameplay feature I'm talking about. The Keyblade is what causes the transformations / the form changes to your character, which is Sora, and switches up his styles by transforming the Keyblade into, say, a hammer, to mini blades, basically daggers, but they cover his hands instead of it being like actual daggers, or even guns for some of them, like the one of the first Keyblades you get. It gives you the ability to use blasters. I think it's called magic blasters, yeah, something like that. On top of that, the way they're used in this one compared to Kingdom Hearts 2, I feel is a lot more balanced than it was in Kingdom Hearts 2. I was originally very skeptical about it, but it really works, and I really like it. So in Kingdom Hearts 3, it's accessed through basically after you've finished a combo and you've got like, well, it's not a combo, after you've finished like a bar of it's like 3 arrows, that determines like when you get like something that they call situation commands in this game, and that can be to do with magic, but we're not there for magic, we're here for the form changes. So you then have to click triangle to choose the form change, and then you can use that form change to basically mix up your attacks. Also, you can switch Keyblades mid-battle, which is a great feature, and it works very well with the form changes. That's what I feel makes it a really good addition, because you don't have to use the transformations as soon as you've accessed them, but you can totally do it if you want to. And this again makes for nice mix-ups in combos and magic use, because it also affects how magic works. Some, it will turn all your magics into spirals, so it'll go around you instead of like being aimed at an enemy if it's supposed to be a directional magic, like fire or blizzard to begin with. But yeah, that's about it for this section, but when I get into combat, it will be, of course, a bit more in depth. So this is going to be the last segment on gameplay for this video. I'd love to go a bit more in depth with everything, but I'm trying to keep this as tight and as spoiler free as possible, and I also want to get on to more of the combat stuff. So what I want to go through with this last bit of gameplay, basically, is how the game runs, how it flows on the PS4 Pro specifically, because that's one of the 2 versions I've played it on. It runs, and I imagine it's the same on the Xbox One X, but it runs very smooth on the PS4 Pro. The only caveat being, you have to go into the settings of the Pro, turn super sampling off, and turn the base resolution down to 1080p. That way you can get the full 60 frames experience without it barely dropping at all. Up in the higher resolutions, there are chances, well, you do get 60 FPS, but it's more likely to dip the higher you go, and the highest frame might be 55 or something if you go all the way to try super sampling 4K. I'm not sure, I've not tried that, I don't have a 4K display, but it was having some issues before I put it onto the super sampling 1080p mode. Off the super sampling onto the 1080p mode. Sorry. That makes for the game being a lot smoother than the base PS4 version, which is already pretty smooth as far as these games have gone for the past while. I mean, in terms of 0.2 basically running like dog do on the regular PS4, a really unstable 30 frames, whereas the Pro was alright, but it was reaching 45 frames to about 50 frames. This time it's the standard PS4 that's reaching 45 to roughly 50, and the Pro is managing to run at 60 frames per second at 1080p. It is really smooth, and I really enjoy it. Now we're moving on to practically gameplay part 2, which of course is the combat. Again, for the combat as well as the gameplay, it is pretty fluid, better than I expected or imagined after playing 0.2 and any other Osaka Kingdom Hearts games. I really have no problems with it. The only problems with it is moving around during battle, but even then, that's still more fluid than it has been for years. I'm actually going to put like a whole section of what I put into many different notes together, because it's all roughly the same thing. You don't want to hear me going over the same thing like thrice. So basically, this is going to be about the bosses. In short, big bosses, whether they be mini bosses or actual like story mode bosses like the Titans in Olympus, they are pretty annoying. I'm going to say especially the Tornado Titan. I've put down on my notes here that the Tornado Titan is BS, but let's just say that, let that speak for itself. In terms of the rest of the bosses, the big bosses, they have no stagger, barely any stagger, unless, again, going back to the Titans, the Rock Titan has a little bit of stagger, but that's part of the fight anyway. Like you've got to hit his feet, and then after you've hit his feet, like he kind of knocks back for a second, giving you a bit of extra time to go at his other foot, whichever one you haven't destroyed at that point. And then what I wouldn't really class as a stagger is his basically a little mini cut to watch him fall back onto the mountain that he's mounted on. Besides that, that boss is pretty easy, but still can be annoying if you don't know how to avoid some of his attacks, and one of his attacks especially can send you back pretty far, and that does get quite frustrating, especially for a first time player, even on beginner mode. Other big bosses I like to talk about are bosses like okay, this is in terms of like story big bosses now, not size big bosses, but later on in the game there are some bosses that are very gimmicky, and some that are also again very big and have a lot of stat animations which can be very frustrating to deal with. One is in the Big Hero 6 world, and it's a lot of air combat, and that's very gimmicky, and I didn't like that. Again, not trying to spoil anything, that fight was that had to be done like 5 times until I managed to get that one down to a T. Also, mini-bosses, which, granted, are a lot easier to deal with, can still pull off some really just annoying moves that even, I'd say, some of the most careful players will not see sometimes. It's not even necessarily revenge value or anything, which is what a lot of bosses have, but it's more so like just the boss wants to do one thing, even though it should be staggering at that moment because of its size. Depending on the mini boss, it will just it'll go right through it. And although you can now block midair, like if you need to like get the face for extra damage or whatever, or if that's the only place you can get damage on, if you have to go for the face, you can still block midair, dash midair. And a lot of stuff, but sometimes I feel like there's a bit of delay or lag on what you're trying to do, and sometimes it just doesn't work at all. Like you'll want to block, but it'll still give you your combo, even though even though now there is a feature to cancel out of combos, to block, and to dash away, it still won't 100% of the time work. That's probably something that it's probably not going to get patched, but that's something that probably could have done with having a look at before the game released, but even then it's just really small, and although it annoys me to high hell, I just deal with it. Oh, remember when I said I would describe some of the combat from the gameplay section more in depth? Kind of made a little lie. Instead, what I meant was, I'm going to tell you the one thing that makes all the combat null and void. You see, there's a feature, it's in wide quotation marks, there is a feature in the game dubbed attraction flow. It goes along similar lines to situation commands, except you don't earn it. No, it's practically given to you at any given moment, and it can just make everything just... It's pointless to even want to actually attack an enemy if you have an attraction flow, because let's just say you pop an attraction flow and everything's gone. Everything is dead. There's especially one, which can appear in bosses, by the way. This is the funny part. There is one called the pirate ship, which absolutely shreds the health of anything near it or far away, because it's not only a close by attack, it's also a projectile as well. So you're basically seesawing this big massive boat, you know, like you'd see in a theme park, one of those tide boats or whatever they call it at whatever place you go into, that go up and down and up and down, except it splashes water, very powerful water, at the enemies. And yeah, one of the most difficult bosses for me in the game, I was able to completely just destroy with this, and that was an endgame boss. That was supposed to be an endgame boss, and although I struggled for the first, time, as soon as my second time came around, it practically fed me the pirate ship attraction flow, and let's just say my 5 to 10 minute attempt the first time became under a minute, because not only that, like I said before, magic is OP in this game, so topped off with that, I was able to just wipe the floor. So that is something I really, really, really don't like, and I'd be very happy to see it disappear. I have heard that as we're apparently getting a big update around the summer, I would assume, with a whole new game mode, difficulty game mode, it's gonna make these a lot less powerful. We're really looking forward to it. I don't want to do a level 1 playthrough, because even though that's supposed to be what the critical mode's supposed to be, the critical mode will have damage scaling, and unlike the other games, the level 1 0 XP ability only allows you to do the smallest chip damage possible in anything, and it is disgusting. I just, basically, this is a rant about me wanting critical mode back. It's not here yet. It's been, what is it now? It's almost May. It's almost been 5 months. Well, 4 months. It's almost been 4 months since the release of the game. It's not. I'm not happy, but that's just the one thing I'm not happy about. I just feel like that's the one thing that ruined the entire game for me, and I didn't like it. Now that rant's over. We'll get on with the rest. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is either combat is too easy or too tedious and annoying to deal with. This kind of game design can be quite annoying for the speedrunning community, as everything about the combat feels so RNG, as I've been talking about, ranting about. And it's possible to have like a setup for a speedrun. This is a segment exclusively for speedrunners, by the way. It's possible to speedrun as long as you have the right setup for it, as long as you know what you're doing. I've seen people complete this within 3.5 or within 3 hours. I can't remember the latest speedrun time. I watch a bit of Nintendo, I watch a bit of Crispy Me, and they're the only two people I really watch speedrun the game, and they've gotten at least under 4 hours. I've not checked up for a while because I've been into other things at the moment, but I just feel like it's not the best Kingdom Hearts game for speedrunning, although like some of the other games do have their problems, it does seem a lot more accessible to get a good time in, because a lot more of the things are overpowered, but in the aspects of more so movement, like with Dreams of Distance, the movement in that is quick with the flow motion, and that game can be beaten relatively quickly. It's just, basically this is just a warning: if you're a speedrunner, you need to make sure you're prepped. And warning, the only speedruns I've seen so far are on beginner mode, because that's the easiest one to basically get through. Right, now I want to quickly move on to story. I would make these segments a lot longer, however, there is official reports, interviews, talking about the next... Basically, this winter we're supposed to be getting a quote-unquote final mix of Kingdom Hearts 3 with extra scenes, I think a few extra gameplay segments. So I really want to get a more complete review out after that's been around. Only because I feel like I don't want to be saying a ton of stuff now only for it to just either one, be the same then, or two, be fixed then, and then me look stupid if someone's playing the final mix. But I also just want to get on to the story, and I want to make this video a bit quicker. We're already running around the 30-minute mark, and I don't usually make 30-minute long videos, so this is getting a bit scary for me. So the beginning of this section is going to be quick fire, and you will hear me moving pages around because they're on different pages, my notes. So first of all, the voice acting for the game is fine for the most part. Haley Joel Osment, the voice of Sora, has done a lot better this time than he did in Dreams of Distance and in the small bit of 0.2 that he showed up in. Some of the voice actors, I feel they lack the character that they should do as their characters. Like, for example, for an early game, non-spoilery example, Hercules, when he talks in cutscenes, and even in-game, because you hear voice lines in-game to basically say, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, oh, good job, or whatever. And he just... I'll give you an example, right? So, you'll have Sora Donald Goofy being like, hey, thanks Hercules, thanks for saving us, and then we'll just have Hercules going, no problem, Sora, Donald, Goofy... as if he just basically doesn't want to be there. So that I don't really dig that. Another good point though is the humour has gotten a lot better. It doesn't seem as, I mean, it still seems stupid, but it's the actual funny kind of stupid rather than the we're trying to be funny kind of stupid but failing miserably. Let's have a look for another thing. Ah yes, Riku is a playable character in this game, although he's only in it for like 2 small segments, and he feels basically like a throwaway idea. Like there's a whole section of the game they could have had in there where you're going around the Realm of Darkness. That's where a lot of the stuff that isn't happening. Basically, you don't see a lot of the Realm of Darkness in this game, but it's where a lot of the story, or like half of the story, is based at the moment. So it's kind of like, it needs to be there, but they don't put it in there nearly enough as it should be. On top of that though, like, his gameplay is just Sora's, so that's why I've not put it in. That's why I don't put it in gameplay or combat. The thing I'd like to say about story is it doesn't really... It's really hard to put this into words, but the story feels very disconnected at the beginning, and it only seems to really pick up at the end. The only other bits of story really stand within the intermissions between worlds, so you'll just have a lot of exposition crammed in between 2 worlds, and that makes everything seem very messy, and the story just doesn't feel like it was laid out in a professional manner. It feels kind of, right, we want you to just play the game, we want you to just explore the Disney worlds, because this is a game that involves a lot of Disney worlds, and then we're just going to throw you into what the game's supposed to be about, where compared to Kingdom Hearts 2, and even the handheld titles like Birth by Sleep and Dreams of Distance, the story was still interwoven with the worlds. and it didn't feel like two separate entities just coming together after one another or in between one another. So that's a very negative part for me, and it's another thing that kind of ruined the experience and has overall sullied my grade for this game. Now for the final stretch, we are going off the script, and we are talking about the end of the game and how it all comes together. I've not finished the game properly in a while, but I remember the ending pretty well, because I spent a lot of time trying to get all the extra endings as well. This also is spoiler territory, so warning, if you don't want to see it, click the timestamp for the verdict, please. I do not want someone who wants to play this game get spoiled, because it ruins literally everything, especially for players that have played the other games and haven't had time to play this one yet. Please, if you don't want spoiling, leave or go to the verdict now. Thank you. Right, so before we actually get into the story and how everything ties up in this game, I know, it's fun, it's story time, we have to go basically into the past of the series. So, yeah, what I'm going to do here now is I actually don't even know if it's controversial or not, but I'm going to start from the first game and work my way from there, with ad-libbing some bits, because I don't want to give away everything again, in case people who are here, don't necessarily know the rest of the games, but I'm still going to spoil the end of this game. So yeah, we're going to start with Kingdom Hearts 1. The story in that is basically, you're a kid on an island, your friends get consumed by darkness, one is actually consumed by darkness, one is just practically brain dead, and you have to save them both, but you're more interested in the brain dead one because she's like the love interest. And get this, the enemy is actually your friend, but he's not your friend, he's actually Ansem. Ansem is also not your friend, because he's not Riku. On top of that, yes, when you do that, you save your friends, you then depart with them both, and then it's on to the next game, which is Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories, you're Sora, you don't know where your friends are, you're trying to find them. Basically, you get caught up in a castle, you forget everything, and you think this girl that's taking your memories is actually your lady friend, but not your lady friend at the same time. Like, it's someone else, but her memories, or her memory changing abilities, are able to basically make you think that she's the only person you've known for life. But this isn't on her own accord. She's being puppeteered by a big pink-haired dude, which isn't Ansem, because you defeated Ansem, and Ansem's actually grey-haired. Then you defeat pink-haired dude after defeating a lot of other people, and some really scary deaths along the way. And then it's on to the next game, where you've actually been put in basically a stasis pod by the girl who's now giving you your memories back, so you know that you're after Kairi and not her. I already gave the name away, but you're after Kairi and not her, and Riku of course as well, which you had a bit of another spat with in Chain of Memories, but he wasn't actually Riku. Again, it was a different Riku, which was a replica based on memories of Riku that Namine had used. Still with me? I hope so, because we're still going on to number 2. So, in number 2, you're still looking for Kairi and Riku. Riku is actually not Riku, but Ansem, and he's trying to fight Xehanort. And you find out that Xehanort is basically Ansem, but not Ansem, and in fact someone called Xehanort. Basically, Xehanort is the big bad guy, let's just say, and he's the big bad guy you've got to fight in number 3. By the way, I lied again when I said I wasn't going to give too many plot threads away. I've already said that Riku was still Ansem technically in Kingdom Hearts 2, so yeah, it's very complicated. Now we're going to move on to the rest. Birth by Sleep, a game made after Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories and 2, but is actually set 10 years before Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories, and 11 years before 2. In this one, it is Xehanort's backstory, basically, whilst also giving us 3 new characters to develop, along with their master. In this game, the 3 characters you get to play around with are Aqua, Terra, and Ventus. Except you have to play them in the order of Terra, Ventus, Aqua. Now I say this because it's how they put it down when you're playing it, but you get the most out of the story by understanding these ones individually first. So Terra's story is about basically becoming the big bad and becoming the puppet of Xehanort, then making Xehanort able to be alive later on and create Ansem and Xemnas. Then we have Ventus, who is not Sora, but gives Sora a piece of his heart, which also makes it so that Sora was able to produce a nobody, like Kaira's nobody, which is Naminé, but not Naminé because it's a guy, and it's actually Roxas, which looks a lot like Ventus. But it's okay, it's not Ventus, because he wears a different style of clothing. Same colour, different style. Now last up we have Aqua, or like the community call her, basically, Water Mama. Don't ask why, but it makes perfect sense. She's very motherly, she likes to take care of both Terra and Ventus, even though she's in between Terra's and Ventus' age. She is the mother of the gang, in a sense. Her arc in this is basically saving her friends from their fate, but ultimately failing and falling into her own fate, which then leads into the events that become Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, alongside the fact that Xehanort has... Oh, I forgot to mention, Xehanort had to kill himself to become Ansem and Xemnas. But yeah, alongside the fact that Xehanort is still kicking in a sense, and forging his plan by the daily with his two versions, ultimately to then become whole in Dream Drop Distance. I don't think I'm missing out on anything like major story-wise, but in Dream Drop Distance, basically that game's all about, yeah, if you kill a Heartless and a nobody of someone, they come back, and that's like a theme throughout the whole game. So Xehanort's back in that one alongside Ansem and Xemnas through time travel, and then he's also collecting like 13 including himself and his two other hymns, but also some backups for his organisation, which is what you fight in the third installment. Now yeah, the organisation's whole thing, now that we're into Kingdom Hearts 3, for the Disney worlds, they're literally there to just taunt you and basically say, yeah, you better watch out, we're done. Well, you're done. We've done what we need to get you done. We're gonna win. Lol. Ha 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 ha. That's literally all they do throughout the Disney worlds until the end, when it gets into the original story stuff, and you have them basically the boss rush of them lot, and they're all then actually giving you proper story points that would be nice and neat throughout the rest of the story, but no, they decided to just make it all happy little Disney fun time. And yeah, the fights themselves, they're pretty good. They have, from the top of my head, there's Marluxia, which was pink-haired dude in Com. Larxene, there's also Luxord, Xemnas of course, Ansem of course, young Xehanort, which is not Xehanort that's alive, because that's old Xehanort, but also young Xehanort is alive of course, but that's him from the past. Also Terranort, which is the possessed Terra, which Xehanort used to basically make the Ansem and Xemnas Xehanorts that we know of. Also there was Syax, and a character from 358, which I don't want to get into that too much because apparently she's getting more exposition in the final mix, but Xion is a friend of Roxas's and another teammate of yours, Axel's, in this game, but she was used as a puppet and wasn't actually necessarily a friend at the time, but it's all a bit complicated to say in a bit of a quick-fire way, but she was also someone you have to fight, part of the 13. And then I think the last remaining two were Vanitas, which is technically evil Sora, but is evil Ventus, and evil Riku Replica, which, a funny thing is, there's a good Riku Replica in the game as well, but he only exists within like normal Riku, so I mean that's just a bit of something I thought I'd throw in there just for extra complication. I'm really not ashamed to say that this series has become a mess. After you've fought those guys, you then fight Xehanort. I'm not going to get into the gameplay of that, because again, that might be something that'll change drastically in the final mix or whatever, but I don't know. I want to play Critical before giving this game an even longer, scarier review. But in terms of story for Xehanort, his arc at the end, by the end of this, it was so unsatisfying, but also, I guess, the best way they could do it without insulting too many fans. But yeah, the big bad guy that's been planning this and been basically committing genocides everywhere, or trying to commit genocides everywhere, well, in terms of, like, from a distance, he actually, it's just misunderstood, you know? He didn't mean any harm, he just wanted to create a better world by destroying half of it, or more. Sounds a bit like a very topical character from a movie that's releasing soon. Oh, by the way, this is recorded just before Endgame comes out, so just thought I'd throw that in there. Yeah, I hope that doesn't end up like that, but back to Kingdom Hearts 3. So Xehanort gets the redemption. It's a rather lazily done redemption though, so I wouldn't say it was the best way to do it, but a lot of people kind of excuse it for the fact that, oh well, we don't want to kill someone off in like a, we don't want the good guy to kill someone off in like a really harsh way, so I can understand it, but yeah, it just seemed too sloppy and lazy, and for the ending they threw in a few little limitations for Sora about something he had to do, which was collect hearts of his friends. So he used the power of waking, something I've tried not to touch on in this because it's a very... I don't think anybody actually, not even the writers, know what it actually does, because 1 second it was a helpful tool to save everyone, and then last second everybody was saying in this game that, oh, if you use it, you're going to slowly tear away from this living world, which, guess what, actually happens to our good boy Sora, basically making him not feel respected and giving the bad guy more respect than the character you've played as for the past 15 years or more, depending on where you come from. It does not satisfy me. I do not like it one bit, but also at the same time, I guess they were just trying to be very anime whilst also trying to not be too adult at the same time. I don't know. It's just, let's just say I didn't like the ending, and that's another thing that's bumped down my grade. And I know this video sounds like a lot of nonsense, but the game, I guess what I'm trying to say is the game was everything I wanted up until the last 10 minutes. And that was the most disappointing thing for me, as a fan that has been following it for over a decade. Anyway, that's enough of me going about the story. Like I said, I'll go more in depth with my later review, basically a year later from the release, when they released the final mix package. Yeah. Now you've made it to the end. Welcome back, everybody that had to leave just for the spoilers. It wasn't too much spoilers, but I understand how people like to keep their they like to keep safe from spoilers. I was that person when the game was coming out. I almost fell into the whole trap of looking at Japanese gameplay and looking at leaks from leaked English copies. But yeah, I understand that even saying Sora is happy at any point in this game could be sensitive to some people, but I mean, it's a given because it's Sora. Anyway, when it comes down to my verdict though, in terms of the game, it was fun pretty much all round. The only disappointments were some of the gameplay features like attraction flows and how OP magic was. Even though it was fun to use, they were still too overpowered for my tastes in terms of wanting to be someone that had a bit of a challenge, because I went for proud mode. I didn't go for beginner or standard because I wanted to go for the hardest challenge they had available. Turns out that wasn't the most hardest if you exploited those things. But yeah, it was fun. The story was alright. Some parts were much better than others. The intermissions, if they were just weaved into the actual story a bit more, it wouldn't have felt as broken, and it wouldn't have been as problematic to me. But I mean, they were, and I can't stop that. I can't help that. They're probably not even going to change that when it comes to the final mix. But on top of that, the end was crap, let's just say. Like, for me at least, I did not like how everything panned out with what happened. Again, because this is spoiler-free territory, I'm not going to say. But overall, that would knock my verdict to about an 8 on a good day, a 7 on a bad. So I'm going to go for a 7.5 out of 10. Of course, we're doing this out of 10. Don't worry, it's not over 100, it's not that bad. I enjoyed it. As a fan, I loved it, but as someone who's invested with the story, it was also a disappointment. Anyway, thank you for coming to watch the review. I know it's long, I know I rambled. I apologise for those people who don't like rambly videos, but I assume you've gone off by now. This probably hasn't been the most interesting review, but this is the first time I've actually done a review of what I believe is in-depth quality, and I hope this says 42 minutes and not 42 seconds, because that would be a really small review, but it's not 52 seconds, so don't worry. I'm okay. Yeah, thank you for staying, thank you for watching. I'm gonna be doing more of these in the future with different games, but as of right now, I'll see you freaks later.